On October 13th, 2025, while most of humanity was engrossed in the mundane scroll of daily life, an event of potentially cosmic significance unfolded. An event most of the world missed entirely. The date itself carries a weight for those who track the echoes of history and the strange coincidences that stitch our timeline together. It marks precisely 108 years since a crowd of tens of thousands gathered in a field in Fatima, Portugal, and witnessed what they described as the sun dancing in the sky. A miracle, a mass hallucination, an unexplained atmospheric phenomenon that remains debated to this day. But we are not here to talk about the miracles of 1917, at least not yet. We are here because on that exact anniversary, an interstellar visitor, an object from the profound darkness between stars known as 3I Atlas, may have spoken to us. According to the meticulous observations of researcher David Sereda, this object did something comets and asteroids simply do not do. It pulsed. Not randomly, not chaotically, but in a sequence so elegant, so precise, it defied natural explanation. 5 distinct pulses, a pause, then 8, then 13. 5, 8, 13. If you know anything about the patterns woven into the fabric of reality itself, those numbers should send a shiver down your spine. This is the Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical signature of creation itself, found in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, the swirling arms of galaxies. It is the universe's favorite numbering system for growth and efficiency. Let me be unequivocal about why this is so profoundly unusual. Comets, as they approach the sun, undergo a process called sublimation. Ice turns directly to gas, jetting out in messy, unpredictable bursts dictated by rotation, composition, and solar heat. They are chaotic natural engines. They do not count. They do not encode messages. They certainly do not select specific numbers from a sequence that humans have recognized as sacred for millennia. Yet, if Sereda's observations are accurate, that is precisely what 3I Atlas appeared to do. This is exactly the kind of signal that SETI researchers have spent decades hoping to find. Not a random burst of static, but something structured, intentional, and unmistakably artificial. It's a handshake across the cosmic dark, written in a language older than any human tongue. But here is where the story twists from the extraordinary into the deeply unsettling, and where our investigation truly begins. Just as these alleged pulses were occurring, as this potential first chapter in a cosmic conversation was being written, our eyes in the sky, our most critical instruments for witnessing such an event, went dark. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, our primary real-time solar monitor, went offline for scheduled maintenance. The feed cut out, the data stream stopped. And this wasn't an isolated incident. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's powerful high-rise camera, one of the most powerful imaging systems ever pointed at another planet, had gone silent weeks earlier. The Psyche space probe, on its way to a metal-rich asteroid, experienced a communications blackout in early September. 3 separate systems, 3 separate missions, all experiencing gaps in coverage during the exact window when an interstellar object was potentially broadcasting mathematics at us. Is this a chain of coincidences, the mundane failures of aging technology in the harsh environment of space? Or is it a pattern of a different kind? A pattern of suppression? The timeline itself tells a story we cannot ignore. September 1st, Psyche goes dark. October 1st, High-Rise stops returning images. October 13th, the Fatima anniversary, the alleged Fibonacci pulses, the SDO blackout. Each day a domino falling, each blackout a piece of data we will never recover. This is the central, uncomfortable question we will explore together. What do you do when the evidence itself is withheld? What do you do when the instruments that should be watching go blind at the critical moment? Before we go any deeper down this rabbit hole, I need to know, is this connecting with you the way it's connecting with me? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, what time it is there, and whether you think we're getting the whole truth or just the version they want us to believe. And if you want this community, this search for answers, to grow stronger, make sure you subscribe and share this video. You are the fuel behind this investigation. Thank you for having our back. To understand the sheer brilliance of using the Fibonacci sequence as a signal, you must first appreciate that this is not a human invention. It is a universal discovery. You have likely seen this sequence countless times without realizing you were looking at it. Every sunflower head contains 2 sets of spirals, one curving clockwise and the other counterclockwise. Count them carefully, and you will find the numbers are consecutive Fibonacci numbers. 21 and 34 or 34 and 55, or 55 and 89, depending on the species. The seeds pack themselves into this pattern because it is the most efficient way to use space, allowing the maximum number of seeds to fit into the available area. Evolution did not learn this from a textbook. The mathematics is built into the physics of growth itself. The chambered nautilus builds its shell in a perfect logarithmic spiral that follows the golden ratio, the number approximated by dividing consecutive Fibonacci numbers. Each new chamber is proportionally larger than the last, creating that iconic curve that has become a symbol of natural perfection. Hurricanes spiral according to the same mathematics. Galaxies spin their arms outward in golden spirals containing billions of stars. The proportions even appear in the human body. The distance from your chin to your eyebrows compared to the distance from your eyebrows to the top of your head approaches the golden ratio. Your fingers from palm to tip contain bones that decrease in length according to this divine proportion. We are, quite literally, built from this pattern. This is precisely why SETI researchers have always hypothesized that any deliberately transmitted signal would likely contain either prime numbers or Fibonacci sequences. These are not arbitrary choices. They are mathematical truths that exist independently of the mind that finds them. An alien civilization on a planet orbiting a star 100 light-years away would discover the same Fibonacci sequence we know because it is inherent to spiral growth and efficient packing. They would find the golden ratio in their own biology, their own planetary structures, their own galaxies. If you want to say hello to someone who evolved under a different sun, speaking a language you could never pronounce, mathematics is your only viable bet. Numbers do not care about biochemistry or culture. 5 plus 8 equals 13 everywhere in the universe. This brings us back to David Serida's claim about 3i Atlas. According to his observations, the object emitted a burst of 5 pulses, followed by 8, followed by 13, and then silence. It is a fascinating, elegant choice if you are designing a message. The sequence is long enough to be unmistakably deliberate, but short enough to be repeated and recognized. You are not overwhelming the receiver with data. You are offering a simple, profound proof. You are saying, I understand recursion. I understand the mathematics of growth. I know you will recognize these numbers because any civilization with telescopes and mathematics will have discovered them. Now that you have their attention, they will be watching closely for what comes next. Compare this to what we expect from natural objects in space, the chaotic, messy outgassing of a comet, and the distinction could not be clearer. That would require timing, control, and intention. This is where we must introduce necessary skepticism. Everything described relies on Serida's observations. These claims have not been verified by NASA, the European Space Agency, or any official astronomical body. No peer-reviewed paper has confirmed the Fibonacci pulse sequence. We do not have multiple independent observers reporting the same phenomenon. Science does not advance on single claims, no matter how compelling. It advances on repeatable observations and verifiable data. Without that verification, we are in the territory of an interesting hypothesis rather than established fact. But the absence of official confirmation does not mean the observation is false. It means we are suspended in that uncomfortable zone between detection and verification, between seeing something and knowing what we have seen. We are left balancing two equally unsettling possibilities. Either we are witnessing the human mind doing what it does best, finding order in chaos and constructing meaning from coincidence, or we are seeing the first deliberate mathematical message from beyond our solar system, a message that arrived on a historically significant anniversary and was promptly buried under a cascade of conveniently timed instrument failures. Let us now travel back through time, exactly 108 years, to October 13th, 1917. Portugal was 3 years into the First World War, a nation exhausted, divided, and anxious about the future. In a small agricultural region north of Lisbon, 3 shepherd children had been claiming for months that a luminous figure, whom they called the Virgin Mary, appeared to them on the 13th of each month, delivering messages about prayer, penance, and future events. The Catholic Church was skeptical but intrigued, and word spread like wildfire. On this particular October day, somewhere between 30,000 and 70,000 people, believers, skeptics, journalists, and the simply curious, converged on a field near the village of Fatima. Many hoped to witness a miracle. Many others were there to debunk what they assumed was childish fantasy or outright fraud. What happened next has been fiercely debated for over a century. Multiple witnesses, including avowed skeptics, reported, that after a period of rain, the clouds suddenly parted and the sun appeared to move in impossible ways. Descriptions vary. Some said it spun like a fiery wheel, others that it danced erratically across the sky, others still that it plunged terrifyingly toward Earth before returning to its normal position. Colours rippled across the landscape, and people's rain-soaked clothes were reportedly dried instantly in a sudden, inexplicable blast of heat. The event lasted approximately 10 minutes, and then the sun resumed its normal appearance. To this day, no scientific consensus explains what so many people saw, with theories ranging from mass psychogenesis to atmospheric optical effects. Now, fast forward exactly 108 years to October 13th, 2025. An object from interstellar space, following a trajectory that brought it from beyond our solar system, allegedly emits a mathematical sequence at precisely the moment when Earth's primary solar monitoring satellite goes offline. The coincidence of dates is exact. Not approximately the same time of year, not within a week or two, but the precise calendar anniversary of one of the most widely witnessed, unexplained phenomena of the 20th century. If you are the kind of person who believes coincidences are just coincidences, this probably does not move you. But if you are the kind of person who sees patterns and wonders if they might be signposts, this demands rigorous investigation. The number 108 itself carries immense significance in multiple mystical and religious traditions. In Hinduism and Buddhism, it is considered sacred, the number of beads on a mala prayer necklace. The distance between Earth and the Sun is approximately 108 times the Sun's diameter. Choosing this specific date for a signal, if indeed a signal was sent, would maximize its chance of being noticed by a specific subset of humans. Those who track cosmic events, those interested in SETI, those who study the intersection of astronomy and historical anomalies. It is, in essence, targeted signaling. This is where we enter territory that makes many scientists deeply uncomfortable, linking acclaimed scientific observation to religious history, mixing astronomy with mysticism. The criticism is fair. Confirmation bias is a powerful force. Once you decide a cosmic event is connected to a historical one, you will start finding connections everywhere, reading significance into random details. This is how conspiracy theories are born. But consider the alternative perspective. If an intelligence wanted to send a message that would be recognized, discussed, and investigated, rather than dismissed as instrumental noise, choosing a date with deep historical and cultural resonance would be a strategic, even brilliant maneuver. It would create exactly the kind of attention and debate we are engaging in right now. The Fatima event has never been officially explained, and the October 13th, 2025 event occupies a similar liminal space. We have two mirrors facing each other. Across a century, each reflecting mysteries the other amplifies. What makes this connection particularly staggering is the level of planning it implies. If 3I Atlas is a natural object following a gravitational trajectory determined millions of years ago, how could its arrival possibly coordinate with a human calendar date and a specific religious anniversary? The answer is, it could not. Not unless someone adjusted that trajectory. Not unless the object is not following a natural path but a designed one, calculated to arrive at our sun on a specific date with pinpoint precision. Data is the lifeblood of modern astronomy. We do not discover planets by peering through eyepieces anymore. We discover them by analyzing gigabytes of light-curve data from orbital observatories. We do not find asteroids by scanning the sky with our eyes. We find them through automated surveys that photograph the entire visible sky every few nights. Every major discovery of the last few decades has come from enormous datasets processed by computers. When that data stream is interrupted, we go blind, and the universe continues its silent opera without a human audience. Let us construct a precise timeline of the blackouts that cluster ominously around the October 13th event. First, the Psyche. Mission: a spacecraft launched to study a metal-rich asteroid in the main belt between Mars and Jupiter. From September 1st through September 5th, Psyche experienced a communications blackout. NASA attributed this to a safe mode triggered by onboard anomaly detection, a routine protective measure where the spacecraft shuts down non-essential systems and waits for ground commands. 5 days of darkness during a critical alignment window when Earth, Mars, and several other solar system objects were positioned in rare geometric configurations. Next is the HiRISE camera, aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. HiRISE is one of the most powerful cameras humans have ever sent to another planet, capable of resolving features less than a meter across from orbit. It has provided us with stunning high-resolution images of Martian canyons, polar ice caps, and potential landing sites. According to research, HiRISE went offline on October 1, 2025. The official explanation involves a failure in the electronics unit for one of the camera's imaging sensors, a problem that had been degrading since 2023 and finally failed completely. The camera has not returned images since. Then comes the pivotal date. October 13th. The Solar Dynamics Observatory, NASA's primary real-time solar monitoring satellite, goes offline for what is described as scheduled maintenance. The feed cuts out for several hours during the exact window when 3i Atlas would have been most active, most visible, potentially emitting those alleged Fibonacci pulses. Our best solar observation platform was deliberately turned away. 3 separate systems, 3 separate missions, all experiencing data gaps during the narrow window when an interstellar object is passing through the inner solar system and potentially doing something extraordinary. Take any one of these events in isolation, and you have a routine technical failure, the kind that happens regularly in the brutal environment of space. Electronics fail, cameras degrade, maintenance gets scheduled. But 3 together, clustered, around the same 2-week period during an event that some researchers claim represents first contact. The statistical odds start to look strange, not impossible, but strange enough to warrant a much closer look. Instrument failures in space are indeed common. The radiation environment beyond Earth's magnetosphere is a relentless onslaught of solar particles and cosmic rays that gradually degrades components over time. But there is a difference between random technical failure and a coordinated blackout. Random failures should be distributed randomly across time. You would not expect multiple unrelated systems to fail within days of each other during the same narrow temporal window unless something external was affecting them simultaneously. And if something external was affecting them, what was it? A solar storm that somehow wasn't recorded? A gravitational wave? Or deliberate action by an entity that did not want certain observations to be made? This is where we must be exceptionally careful to avoid runaway conspiracy thinking. There is no public evidence that NASA or any other space agency deliberately disabled instruments to suppress data. The agencies have provided technical explanations for each blackout that fit within normal operating parameters. Accusing them of a cover-up without proof is irresponsible, but it is also true that space agencies have histories of classifying data, delaying releases, and holding back observations until they can be fully vetted. The absence of data creates ambiguity, and ambiguity is the fertile ground in which speculation grows. If HiRISE had been operational, we might have high-resolution images that could confirm or deny unusual activity. If the SDO had been recording, we would have a complete data set from the alleged pulse sequence. Without that data, we are left with second-hand claims, observations that cannot be cross-checked, and a growing, unsettling sense that something profoundly important might have happened just beyond the edge of what we are permitted to see. This is where our investigation takes a sharp turn into territory that most mainstream scientists would dismiss outright, and I need to be unequivocally clear about that from the outset. What I am about to describe is not accepted astrophysics. It is not peer-reviewed. It exists on the speculative fringe where mathematics meets medieval mysticism, where the line between discovery and invention becomes dangerously blurry. But it is also the framework that David Sereda himself uses to interpret the signal from 3i Atlas, and understanding it is essential to grasping the full depth of his claims. Sereda proposes what he calls the hyperdimensional solar system model, or HDSSM. In this model, our solar system is not merely a collection of physical planets orbiting a star. It contains hidden dimensions and orbital positions that correspond to energetic domains and metaphysical orders, specifically the 9 orders of angels from medieval Christian cosmology. He assigns numbers to these positions. 5 represents Earth, our homeworld, the anchor point for human observation. 8 corresponds to what he calls planet 591, which he identifies with the dominions, one of the 9 choirs of angels, 13 maps to the virtues, another angelic order, which he associates with the biblical figure Methuselah. If your skepticism alarm is ringing deafeningly now, that is a healthy and appropriate response. We have left the solid ground of observational astronomy and entered a realm of symbolic mapping where numbers are assigned to untestable metaphysical concepts, and those concepts are then projected back onto physical space to create a model that cannot be falsified by any conventional scientific experiment. This is a hallmark of pseudoscience, taking real observations and mixing them with unverifiable claims to build a structure that feels explanatory, but cannot actually predict anything or be disproven. And yet, the people who build these models often start from genuine questions and genuine anomalies, trying desperately to make sense of data that does not fit mainstream explanations. In Sereda's interpretation, when 3i Atlas emitted pulses of 5, 8, 13, it was not just demonstrating knowledge of the Fibonacci sequence. It was directly referencing his HDSSM. It was saying, I know about Earth, position 5. I know about the dominions at position 8. I know about the virtues at position 13. This would imply that the intelligence behind the object has studied not just human mathematics, but human cosmological models, including esoteric and fringe frameworks. It would suggest a level of cultural knowledge that is breathtaking in its depth and specificity. Someone, or something, has been reading our books, studying our myths, understanding the very specific lenses through which certain humans interpret reality. This model becomes either incredibly compelling or completely absurd depending on your worldview. If you are inclined to believe that angels exist as real entities occupying specific orbital positions in a higher dimensional structure, then the Fibonacci signal becomes a profound theological confirmation. If you are a materialist who views angels as cultural constructs, then this interpretation is meaningless decoration applied to a dubious observation. The model cannot be tested. There is no experiment to prove or disprove the existence of Planet 591. But engaging with the idea seriously, not as truth but as a case study in meaning-making, reveals something fundamental about how humans construct significance from cosmic events. Mainstream astrophysics recognizes 8 planets. We have found no evidence for additional major planets in hidden orbits, though the search for a hypothetical Planet 9 continues. The idea that there are specific positions numerically designated by hidden intelligences is not science. It is cosmology in the ancient sense, a model where physical space is mapped directly onto spiritual significance, much like Dante's Divine Comedy, where the planetary spheres were inseparable from the angelic hierarchies that moved them. If 3i Atlas is signaling using a framework like Sereda's HDSSM, it suggests an intelligence that understands human culture well enough to speak in a language that only certain communities will decode. It is targeted, sophisticated signaling, and that raises the most profound question of all. Why? Why would an interstellar intelligence care about medieval angelology? Why reference frameworks that most humans have forgotten and that science abandoned centuries ago? Unless those frameworks contain a grain of a truth we have overlooked, or unless we are simply projecting our own deeply held beliefs onto the cosmos, seeing in the void what we desperately wish was there. In 1321, the Italian poet Dante Alighieri completed his masterwork, the Divine Comedy. The third part, Paradiso, describes his visionary journey through the celestial spheres, guided by Beatrice, ascending through the orbits of the moon, planets and fixed stars, through the 9 orders of angels, until he reaches the Empyrean and glimpses the divine essence itself. The text is saturated with the astronomical and mathematical knowledge of its time, a synthesis of Ptolemaic cosmology and Christian theology. Scholars have spent 7 centuries decoding its layers of meaning. David Sereda argues that Dante did not merely describe the cosmos as he understood it. He encoded a countdown. From 1321, when Paradiso was completed, to 2025, when 3i Atlas arrived, is exactly 704 years. That number, 704, does not appear in the Fibonacci sequence, but Sereda connects it through other numerological pathways to cycles he believes govern cosmic events. It can be factored as 16 multiplied by 44, numbers that show up in various sacred geometry systems. If you follow chains of association far enough, you can link it to frequencies like 432 Hz, which some alternative researchers claim is a universal resonance. We must pause here and recognize what we are doing. We are taking a number derived from simple subtraction and reverse engineering significance by factoring it and cherry-picking associated meanings from other systems. This is numerology, not mathematics. Mathematics is about necessary testable relationships. Numerology is about finding sufficient, often arbitrary pathways to connect a starting point to a desired conclusion. You can make almost any number seem significant with enough creative factoring. But let us grant for a moment that the 704-year gap might mean something, not because of numerical magic, but because of cultural resonance. If an intelligence wanted to reference the peak of Western civilization's pre-scientific cosmological thinking, Dante's Paradiso represents a monumental achievement, a comprehensive synthesis of medieval astronomy, theology, and poetry that has survived for centuries. It is a deep part of our cultural memory. Choosing a 704-year interval from its completion to send a signal would create a connection that scholars and historians would notice, even if astronomers did not. Dante's cosmology is one where physics and spirituality are inseparable, where angels impart motion to the spheres, and where the universe is a perfectly ordered, meaningful home for consciousness. Modern science dismantled this comforting model, replacing it with gravity and vacuum, giving us predictive power but stripping the cosmos of intrinsic purpose. Some people have never accepted that trade-off, spending centuries looking for ways to restore significance to the heavens. If you are one of those people, and an interstellar object arrives exactly 704 years after Dante completed his map of a purposeful cosmos, you will pay rapt attention. You will wonder if the medieval mystics saw something real that we have trained ourselves not to see, if Paradiso was descriptive rather than imaginative. The challenge with claims like Sarita's is that they exist at the intersection of historical scholarship, mystical interpretation, and cosmic observation. You cannot disprove them because they do not make falsifiable predictions. They offer narratives that connect disparate data points through frameworks of meaning. And narratives are powerful. They are how humans naturally understand the world. When someone offers a story that makes the universe feel intentional again, that suggests our cultural history matters to intelligences beyond Earth, that story has an emotional pull that is independent of its factual truth. The 704-year countdown might be a real intended signal, or it might be a random number that has acquired profound significance through retrospective interpretation. We would need independent, dated predictions from Dante that came true, or some mechanism by which a 14th century poet could know of a 21st century arrival to distinguish between these possibilities. Without that, we are left with a fascinating coincidence that might be a thread in a grand tapestry, or merely a random point we have decorated with far too much importance. Walk into Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Look up at the rose window on the western facade. And you are not merely looking at stained glass. You are looking at theology made visible, mathematics given form. The stonework divides the circular opening into segments based on precise ratios, with the overall diameter relating to the window's height in proportions that approximate the golden ratio. The light flooding through was arranged in patterns that medieval architects believed reflected the divine order of heaven itself. This was not primitive decoration. It was the work of sophisticated mathematicians operating within a cosmological framework that unified physics, aesthetics, and spirituality. They knew their Euclid and their Pythagoras. They understood that certain proportions produced harmony, both visual and auditory. The same sacred geometry appears in the great mosques of the Islamic world. The Great Mosque of Cordoba, the Alhambra, where intricate, fractal-like tilework and arches follow curves derived from compass and straightedge, symbolizing the infinite and orderly nature of creation. The Mayans possessed similar knowledge. The pyramid at Chichen Itza is aligned to cast a serpent-shaped shadow at the equinoxes, an effect requiring precise astronomical calculation. The Dresden Codex contains Venus tables accurate enough to predict the planet's appearances decades in advance. What connects all these disparate traditions is the recognition that certain mathematical ratios appear everywhere. In music, in growth patterns, in planetary orbits. The golden ratio, phi, f, shows up so consistently that it seems to be a universal constant of form. It is not a physical constant like the speed of light, but something perhaps more fundamental, the proportion that emerges when systems optimize for efficiency, stability, and beauty. A nautilus shell grows in a golden spiral because it is the most efficient way to add material while maintaining structural integrity. Galaxy arms spiral according to the same ratio because that is how density waves propagate through rotating systems. The universe, at multiple scales, seems to have converged on the same elegant solution to the problem of growth in constrained space. If an intelligence from another star system wanted to announce itself, using the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio would be to choose the most universal language imaginable. Any technological civilization, regardless of its biology, would inevitably discover these same mathematical truths as they studied their own world. They are not human inventions. They are universal discoveries. Math is not arbitrary. An alien species would also find that the ratio of consecutive Fibonacci numbers converges on 1.618, and they would find it in their own biology and cosmic structures. It is the perfect handshake. This is what makes the 3i Atlas claim so compelling to those who accept it. The object allegedly chose to communicate using a pattern that underlies sacred architecture across human cultures, that governs natural growth from the micro to the macro scale. And that represents one of the few truly universal discoveries mathematics has to offer. If that choice was deliberate, it demonstrates not just intelligence, but a profound sophistication, an understanding that communication requires finding common ground, that you announce yourself by speaking in a vocabulary the receiver already knows and understands deeply. 5, 8, 13 are not random numbers. They are the opening phrase of a language both parties speak fluently, even though they learned it from completely different sources. But we must remain cautious about spiritualizing this too much. The golden ratio appears in nature because of physics and evolution, not because the universe is consciously communicating aesthetic truths. Spirals form from mechanical processes. We incorporated these patterns into our architecture because they are efficient and because our brains, evolved to recognize harmony, find them beautiful. The sacred geometry is real in the sense that the mathematics is real. Whether it is sacred in any deeper sense remains the ultimate open question. If 3i Atlas actually emitted Fibonacci pulses, we are left asking, is it speaking the language of physics or the language of meaning? The two might, in the final analysis, be identical. Mathematics might be the fundamental bridge between consciousness and cosmos, the common ground where minds find each other regardless of origin. Or we might simply be projecting our human longing for meaning onto natural phenomena that follow mathematical rules for purely mechanical, unconscious reasons. The standard model for a comet is a dirty snowball, a nucleus of ice, rock and organic compounds a few kilometers across, a leftover from the solar system's formation. As it approaches the sun, solar heating causes ices to sublimate, creating jets of gas and dust that stream away from the nucleus, always pointing away from the sun due to radiation pressure, forming the characteristic tail. That is the baseline. That is what we expect. 3i Atlas, according to various unverified reports from amateur observers and analysts, does not conform neatly to this model. Some observers claim to have detected a sunward jet, material moving toward the sun rather than away from it. This violates basic physics unless something is actively propelling that material against the immense pressure of the solar wind. Natural outgassing can produce jets at various angles, but you do not get sustained, coherent sunward jets. There is no natural mechanism to maintain them. Then there is the alleged compositional analysis. Spectroscopy of typical comets shows water ice, carbon dioxide, ammonia, methane, and silicate dust, the primordial mixture from the solar nebula. Some reports suggest 3i Atlas shows unusual spectral signatures, including high nickel content and low iron ratios, which do not match typical cometary composition. Nickel-rich objects are usually associated with metallic asteroids, fragments from the cores of protoplanets that were smashed apart in ancient collisions. Finding high nickel in an interstellar object would be interesting, but not impossible. Finding it combined with cometary activity and possible sunward jets, however, starts to build a picture of something that does not fit cleanly into any of our established categories. I must be perfectly clear, these claims are not confirmed by peer-reviewed analysis. NASA and the IAU have not released data supporting unusual composition or anomalous jet directions. What we have are reports from individuals, some credible, some not, without independent verification from professional observatories. They are interesting data points that fit a narrative of anomaly, but they are not proof. That said, the possibility that 3i Atlas is physically unusual deserves exploration. As an interstellar object, it formed in a foreign solar system under conditions that could differ significantly from our own, potentially producing strange compositions. The fact that it is interstellar already makes it extraordinary. Only 2 previous confirmed interstellar objects have passed through. Oumuamua in 2017 and Tuai Borisov in 2019. Both showed unusual characteristics. Oumuamua exhibited non-gravitational acceleration that could not be fully explained by outgassing, and Borisov had an unusually high carbon monoxide ratio. We should expect visitors from other star systems to be weird. But there is weird, and then there is engineered. A sunward jet suggests active propulsion. High nickel with low iron suggests a deliberate manufactured composition, possibly a nickel-based alloy optimized for strength and radiation resistance on an interstellar journey. If you are designing a probe to travel between stars, you would need propulsion for course corrections and braking, and you would need materials that can survive the journey. Every anomaly taken individually could have a natural explanation. Taken together, they begin to sketch the profile of an object that behaves more like a spacecraft than a snowball. This is the probe hypothesis, famously proposed for Oumuamua by Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, who suggested its acceleration could be explained if it were a light sail. The mainstream community pushed back hard, arguing that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence and that we should not jump to artificial origins when natural explanations might still be found. Loeb countered that science has an inherent bias against considering artificiality, that we might be missing genuine technosignatures due to our preconceptions. If 3I Atlas is a probe, it appears far more sophisticated than Oumuamua. It is not just passing through, it is potentially signaling, potentially timing its arrival, potentially maneuvering. That implies active operation, which implies either onboard intelligence or remote control, which implies that someone is still out there, directing it, watching us, waiting to see if we notice. The level of control and energy required for such an interstellar journey is staggering. Or perhaps, it is just a strange rock from a strange system, and we are once again seeing design in the random chaos of the cosmos. Our pattern-seeking minds constructing a spectacular narrative from a handful of unusual but natural data points. In 1969, NASA landed humans on the moon and broadcast it to the world. The original, high-resolution tapes of this epical event were supposed to be archived forever. Instead, they were mislabeled, stored improperly, and eventually recorded over during a tape shortage in the 1980s. The highest quality visual record of humanity's greatest space achievement was lost, not through conspiracy, but through bureaucratic incompetence and cost-cutting. This is how institutions often handle priceless data. Sometimes they lose it through sheer negligence. Space agencies operate with limited budgets, aging infrastructure, and overwhelming data volumes. The pipeline from raw instrument data to published scientific result is long and complex, involving quality checks, calibration, peer review, and embargoes. Data can sit for months or years before becoming public, and sometimes it never does, lost to classification, embarrassment, or simple disinterest. Let's return to our timeline of blackouts. Psyche goes dark from September 1st, 5th. The official explanation is a safe mode triggered by an onboard anomaly. This is a real and routine protective measure, but the timing, during a rare planetary alignment and the approach of an interstellar visitor, adds a layer of coincidence that begs questioning. Was the safe mode triggered by something Psyche detected? High-Rise goes offline on October 1st. The camera had been degrading since 2023, a documented fact. CCD sensors do fail gradually in the space radiation environment. This is normal aging. But October 1st places the final failure exactly 12 days before the Fatima anniversary and the alleged pulses, precisely when its unparalleled imaging capability might have been most valuable. Then, on October 13th, the Solar Dynamics Observatory goes down for scheduled maintenance. Scheduling work months in advance is standard, but maintenance that coincides exactly with a potential first contact event looks deeply suspicious. If you were trying to suppress information about an anomalous cosmic event, you have options. You can classify the data immediately, you can delay its release indefinitely, or you can ensure the instruments are not looking in the first place. There is no public evidence this was done for 3I Atlas. No whistleblowers, no leaked documents. The blackouts have official explanations that fit within normal operations, but absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when investigating organizations with the power and precedent to classify information effectively. This pattern mirrors the history of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. For decades, military and intelligence agencies denied having serious investigation programs. Then, in 2021, official reports confirmed these programs existed. that trained pilots had reported objects performing impossible maneuvers, and that the government took them seriously. The narrative shifted not because the phenomena changed, but because institutional willingness to acknowledge them changed. Could the same be true for 3I Atlas, an object suggesting artificial origin, arriving on a significant date potentially signaling, would be exactly the kind of discovery an agency might handle with extreme caution, verifying and analyzing in private while maintaining a public facade of routine operations. Not necessarily out of malice, but out of a perceived responsibility to manage the societal impact of such a revelation. Or there might be nothing to disclose. The blackouts might be genuinely coincidental. The observations might show nothing unusual. Sarita's claims might be misinterpretations. We are investigating an absence. An absence is infuriatingly difficult to prove. You cannot definitively demonstrate that something exists when the evidence for it is, by its nature, missing or classified. You can only point to patterns, ask uncomfortable questions, and maintain pressure for transparency. What is certain is that when the data pipeline has blackouts during critical windows, intentional or not, it creates an information asymmetry that erodes public trust. Even if nothing extraordinary happened, the perception that something might have happened and was covered up becomes its own reality, shaping how we interpret all future events and official statements. The silence surrounding 3I Atlas, whether cosmic or institutional, is now an indelible part of the mystery we are trying to solve. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio detected a strong, narrowband signal from deep space that lasted 72 seconds. It was so perfectly aligned with expectations for an artificial signal that astronomer Jerry Eman circled it on the printout and wrote, "Wow," in the margin. The "wow" signal remains one of the most compelling candidate signals in SETI history, and also one of the most frustrating, because it was never heard again. This is the nature of anomaly detection in astronomy. A single, stunning data point that vanishes, leaving behind only questions. Was it real? An instrumental glitch? Interference? Without repeatability, without independent confirmation, it cannot constitute proof. Science demands reproducibility. The human brain, however, did not evolve to wait for statistical significance. It evolved to recognize patterns quickly, to connect dots, to see the line in the tall grass before the lion sees you. This cognitive bias, known as apophenia, is the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. It is the engine of superstition, conspiracy theories, and artistic inspiration. It is also essential for scientific discovery, which often begins with the scientist noticing a pattern others missed. The line between genius and delusion is often defined by whether the pattern holds up under rigorous testing. The story of 3I Atlas is a perfect storm for apophenia. We have a set of numbers, 5, 8, 13, that are intrinsically meaningful to humans. We have a date, October 13th, that is historically significant. We have a series of instrument blackouts that cluster around that date. And we have a researcher, David Sarita, who has a pre-existing model, the HDSSM, that assigns specific meanings to those numbers. The brain, presented with these elements, cannot help but try to connect them. It is what brains do. The result is a powerful, emotionally resonant narrative. An alien intelligence, aware of our history and our esoteric traditions, sent a probe to arrive on a specific anniversary, signaled us using a universal mathematical language, and our institutions, for reasons unknown, prevented us from seeing it clearly. This narrative is compelling because it makes the universe feel intentional, meaningful, and connected to human culture. It suggests we are not alone, that our history matters, that someone is watching. It is a far more comforting story than the alternative, that we are a random species on a random planet in a vast, indifferent cosmos, and that the patterns we see are just noise. This psychological need for meaning is a powerful force. It is why the story of 3I Atlas, even if every claim is eventually debunked, will persist. It has all the elements of a modern myth, a mysterious messenger, a hidden message, a powerful institution that might be hiding the truth, and a community of truth seekers trying to uncover it. It is a story that resonates with the deepest parts of our psyche. This is not to say the claims are false. It is to say that we must be acutely aware of our own cognitive biases as we evaluate them. We must demand evidence, not just compelling stories. We must ask for the raw data, for independent verification, for testable predictions. We must be willing to accept that the most likely explanation for the blackouts is coincidence and technical failure, even if that explanation feels less satisfying. The danger lies not in investigating extraordinary claims, but in believing them too quickly, in letting the desire for the story to be true override our critical faculties. The truth about 3i Atlas, whatever it is, will be discovered through patient, careful, and skeptical investigation, not through the feverish excitement of connecting dots that might not be connected at all. The Fibonacci sequence is real. The Fatima event happened. The blackouts occurred. The question is whether they are connected by a cosmic intelligence or only by the human mind's incredible, beautiful, and sometimes deceptive talent for finding stories in the stars. In science, a claim is only as strong as its ability to be independently verified. Galileo's observations of Jupiter's moons were revolutionary because anyone with a telescope of sufficient power could look for themselves and see the same thing. The discovery of the Higgs boson was confirmed because two separate detectors at the Large Hadron Collider, ATLAS and CMS, both found the same signal. This principle of independent verification is the bedrock of the scientific method. It is what separates objective discovery from subjective belief. Where then is the independent verification for the 3i Atlas Fibonacci pulses? As of now, it is conspicuously absent from the public record. No major observatory, no university astronomy department, no amateur astronomer with a professional grade setup has come forward to confirm David Serida's observations. This silence is deafening, and it is the single greatest weakness in the entire narrative. There are several possible explanations for this lack of confirmation. The first and most likely is that the pulses did not happen as described. Serida may have misinterpreted instrumental noise, atmospheric distortion, or a software artifact as a signal. The human eye is excellent at picking out patterns, even when none exist. The second possibility is that the pulses were real, but so faint or brief that only Serida's specific equipment and analysis methods were able to detect them. This is plausible, but unlikely. If an object is pulsing brightly enough to be detected by one observer, it should be detectable by others with similar capabilities. The third, and most troubling possibility, is that the data exists but has been sequestered. If major observatories did detect the pulses, that data could be undergoing internal review, or it could have been classified by government or military entities concerned about the implications. We know that space agencies and defense departments monitor near-Earth objects for planetary defense. If an object starts behaving anomalously, it would immediately attract their attention. Without access to the raw data from telescopes that were observing 3i Atlas during the critical period, we cannot know. We are left relying on a single source, and in science, that is not enough. This is the frustrating limbo of the modern anomaly investigator. The tools for discovery, powerful telescopes, sensitive detectors, are often in the hands of large institutions that control the flow of information. An amateur can make a claim, but without the institutional stamp of approval, that claim will remain on the fringe. The burden of proof rests on the claimant, and until Serida or someone else can provide data that others can analyze and confirm, the Fibonacci pulses of 3i Atlas will remain an unverified anecdote, a tantalizing what-if without the substance to become a what-is. This does not mean we should dismiss it outright. Many major discoveries began with a single unverified observation, but it does mean we must treat it with extreme caution, labeling it as a hypothesis rather than a fact. The search for truth requires both open-mindedness and rigorous skepticism in equal measure. We must remain open to the possibility that Serida is correct, while simultaneously demanding the evidence that would make his claim scientifically credible. The next step in this investigation is clear. We need to find that independent verification. We need to locate other astronomers, professional or amateur, who were observing 3i Atlas on October 13, 2025, and see if their data shows anything unusual. We need to file Freedom of Information Act requests with NASA and other space agencies for any internal reports on 3i Atlas. We need to keep asking the question until we get an answer. The truth is out there, but it will not reveal itself easily. We have to go and find it. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi, during a conversation about the high probability of extraterrestrial life, famously asked, "But where is everybody?" This simple question encapsulates the Fermi paradox, the contradiction between the high estimated probability of intelligent life in the universe and the complete lack of evidence for it. If the universe is teeming with life, why haven't we seen any signs? 3i Atlas, if its more extraordinary claims are true, might represent a partial answer to the Fermi paradox. It suggests that they are not necessarily broadcasting their presence with powerful, omnidirectional radio signals as we have long assumed. Instead, they might be sending small, sophisticated probes on targeted missions, using subtle, mathematical signals that only a prepared observer would recognize. This is the zoo hypothesis, or the interdict hypothesis taken to a new level. It posits that advanced civilizations are aware of us but choose not to interfere openly, instead observing from a distance, perhaps sending occasional, deniable probes to test our level of technological and philosophical development. The Fibonacci pulse could be such a test, a cosmic capture to see if we are smart enough to notice and decode it. If we fail the test, if we dismiss it as noise or conspiracy, then from their perspective, we are not yet ready for open contact. This idea transforms the Fermi paradox from a question of physics into a question of maturity. The great silence is not empty. It is watchful. They are waiting for us to grow up, to develop the perceptual and intellectual sophistication to see the signs they are leaving for us. The Fibonacci sequence, the Fatima anniversary, the Dante countdown, these could all be part of a long-term, gentle acclimation program designed to introduce the idea of other intelligences in a way that aligns with our own cultural and spiritual history, minimizing the potential for societal shock. This is a comforting thought for some, a terrifying one for others. It implies we are being studied, that our progress is being monitored against some unknown standard. It raises the stakes of our own scientific and cultural development. Every time we choose to ignore an anomaly, every time we cut funding for basic research, every time we prioritize conflict over cooperation, we might be failing a test we did not even know we were taking. Of course, the other, simpler answer to the Fermi paradox is that we are alone. The conditions for life, let alone intelligent technological life, might be so rare that we are the only ones in our galactic neighborhood, or even in our galaxy. 3i Atlas would then be just a rock, and all the connections we have drawn are the products of lonely minds in a vast, empty cosmos, seeking companionship that does not exist. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. The universe is probably full of life, but the vast distances of space and time make communication and travel immensely difficult. Probes like 3i Atlas might be the most feasible way to explore, but they might be so rare that encountering one is a once-in-a-millennium event. We might be like islanders in a vast ocean, and a message in a bottle has just washed up on our shore. The question is, do we have the eyes to read it? The late Dr. Jacques Vallée, a renowned computer scientist and astronomer, proposed a radical theory to explain UFOs and other high-strangeness phenomena. He suggested that they might not be extraterrestrial visitors in the literal sense, but rather part of a control system, a non-human intelligence that manipulates human culture and belief systems. This intelligence, according to Vallée, uses a kind of psychic reality that presents itself in forms that are culturally specific to the time and place it appears. In the Middle Ages, it appeared as fairies and demons. In the 1940s and 50s, it appeared as nuts and bolts spacecraft from other planets. It always stays just on the edge of what is believable, never providing definitive proof, but always steering human consciousness in a particular direction. The story of 3i Atlas fits Vallée's control system hypothesis with uncanny precision. Consider the elements: a signal using universal mathematics, the Fibonacci sequence, a connection to a major religious anniversary, Fatima, a link to a foundational work of Western literature, Dante's Paradiso, and a series of frustrating data blackouts that prevent confirmation. This is not a blunt, obvious announcement. It is a subtle, multi-layered phenomenon that engages our intellect, our spirituality, and our skepticism simultaneously. It is designed to be debated, to sow doubt in official narratives, to inspire a community of seekers. It is in essence a perfect modern myth. If Vallée is correct, the purpose of this control system is not to give us answers, but to ask questions of us. It forces us to reevaluate our place in the cosmos, to question the nature of reality, to bridge the gap between science and spirit. It is a catalyst for human evolution, pushing us toward a broader, more integrated understanding of who we are and what the universe might be. The intelligence behind it, whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something even stranger, is not interested in landing on the White House lawn. It is interested in the development of human consciousness. From this perspective, the truth about 3i Atlas is less important than the conversation it has sparked. The investigation itself is the point. The debates, the research, the community forming around this mystery. This is the real phenomenon. The object is merely the trigger. This is a deeply unsettling idea for those who want simple, physical answers. It suggests that the phenomenon is fundamentally interactive and psychological, that it responds to our beliefs and expectations. It means we might never get a clear, unambiguous answer because ambiguity is its primary tool. We are part of a cosmic experiment, and the parameters are being adjusted in real time based on our reactions. Whether you find this idea liberating or terrifying, it provides a powerful lens through which to view not just Three-Eye Atlas, but the entire history of high strangeness on our planet. It suggests that the mystery is not something to be solved, but something to be engaged with. A dialogue between humanity and an intelligence that refuses to show its face, preferring instead to speak through symbols, coincidences, and the silent language of mathematics written across the sky. It is now time to step back and present the strongest possible case against the extraordinary interpretation of Three-Eye Atlas. This is the materialist, skeptical view grounded in Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. From this perspective, there is no mystery here, only a series of unrelated events that have been woven into a compelling but false narrative by pattern-seeking humans. Let's break it down point by point. First, the Fibonacci pulses. There is no independent verification. David Serida's observations are, at present, anecdotal. He may be sincere, but he may also be mistaken. The human brain and eye are notoriously good at imposing order on random data. The pulses could easily be fluctuations in the comet's natural, chaotic outgassing that happened, by pure chance, to approximate a Fibonacci sequence for 3 numbers. 3 numbers is not a long sequence. It is a very short one, and finding a short, known sequence in random data is not statistically improbable. Second, the date. The Fatima anniversary is a coincidence. The universe does not care about our calendar or our religious history. Objects arrive in the inner solar system on trajectories determined by gravity millions of years ago. The odds of an object arriving on any specific calendar date are the same as any other. We notice the coincidence because our brains are wired to notice anniversaries, but the cosmos is indifferent. Third, the blackouts. These are the easiest to explain. The Psyche safe mode was a routine event. The high-rise camera failure was the culmination of a long-documented degradation. The SDO maintenance was scheduled months, if not years in advance. To connect these unrelated technical issues requires seeing a pattern that isn't there. A classic case of apophenia. The instruments went down because that's what complex machines in a hostile environment do. They fail. Fourth, the hyperdimensional model. This is pure numerology and mysticism, not science. Assigning numbers to angelic orders and planetary positions is an untestable, unfalsifiable exercise. It is a belief system, not a scientific theory. The fact that the alleged signal matches this model is meaningless, because the model itself is arbitrary and was created before the signal was allegedly detected. It is a classic case of confirmation bias. Fifth, the physical anomalies. Reports of sunward jets and unusual composition are unverified. They come from the same fringe sources as the pulse claims. Mainstream spectroscopy and imaging have not confirmed these anomalies. Without confirmation, they remain interesting rumors, not data. When you put it all together, the materialist argument is straightforward. We have an interstellar comet behaving like an interstellar comet. A researcher with a pre-existing esoteric worldview misinterpreted its natural activity as a signal. The signal coincided with a religious anniversary by chance, and a series of unrelated instrument failures prevented immediate debunking, allowing a compelling story to grow in the vacuum of hard data. This is not a cover-up. It is a case study in how humans create meaning from randomness. It is a story we are telling ourselves because we find the silent, indifferent cosmos unbearable. The truth, according to this view, is that Three-Eye Atlas is just a rock, and we are alone with our stories, projecting our hopes and fears onto the silent, mathematical void. Let us now engage in a thought experiment. Let us assume, for the sake of argument, that every extraordinary claim about Three-Eye Atlas is true. The Fibonacci pulses were real, deliberate, and verified by multiple independent observatories. The connection to the Fatima anniversary was intentional. The object is an artificially constructed probe. What would happen next? The announcement would be the most significant event in human history. It would instantly shatter our understanding of our place in the universe. Every religion, every philosophy, every political system would be forced to re-evaluate its foundations. The initial reaction would likely be a mixture of awe, fear, and profound disorientation. Economies might tremble, as priorities shift overnight from terrestrial concerns to cosmic ones. There would be a global surge in funding for astronomy, physics, and xenolinguistics. The very fact that we are not alone would unite humanity in a way nothing else ever has, but it would also create new divisions between those who welcome the news and those who fear it, between nations competing to be the first to establish communication, between religious groups that see the intelligence as demonic and those that see it as angelic. The long-term impact is harder to predict. It could catalyze a new age of enlightenment, driving us to overcome our petty squabbles and focus on becoming a spacefaring civilization. It could inspire a new renaissance in art, science, and philosophy as we integrate this new reality. Or it could lead to societal collapse, as old certainties crumble and the sheer scale of the cosmos becomes an overwhelming, terrifying reality. The discovery would not provide immediate answers. It would raise infinitely more questions. Who are they? Where are they from? What do they want? Why now? The process of decoding their intentions would become the central project of our species. The very nature of human ambition would change. Our goals would expand from terrestrial dominance to cosmic citizenship. This is why the potential suppression of such a discovery, if it is happening, is so consequential. The individuals or institutions making that decision would be shaping the entire future trajectory of humanity, based on their own assessment of our readiness. It is the ultimate paternalistic act. Do we have the right to know? Or is the truth too dangerous for us to handle? The story of Three-Eye Atlas, even as an unverified possibility, forces us to confront these questions in advance. It is a dress rehearsal for first contact. By thinking through the implications now, we can prepare ourselves, not with fear, but with wisdom, curiosity, and a renewed commitment to building a global society that is worthy of taking its place in a wider cosmic community. The greatest impact of Three-Eye Atlas may not be the signal itself, but the conversation it has started about who we are and who we want to become. For centuries, astronomy was the domain of wealthy gentlemen and sponsored academics. Today, that has changed dramatically. The digital revolution has democratized discovery. Amateur astronomers with backyard telescopes and CCD cameras now routinely discover new asteroids, variable stars, and even exoplanets. They provide critical data for tracking near-Earth objects and monitoring stellar activity. The internet allows them to share their findings instantly with a global community, cross-checking each other's work and collaborating on a scale that was once impossible. David Sereda, whatever one thinks of his conclusions, is a product of this new era. He is an independent researcher, operating outside the traditional academic system. He does not have to wait for peer review or grant approval to publish his observations. He can present them directly to the public. This has both advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is speed and freedom from institutional bias. An amateur can pursue a radical idea that a tenured professor might avoid for fear of professional ridicule. They can follow the data wherever it leads, without being constrained by disciplinary boundaries. The disadvantage is a lack of oversight and rigor. Without the peer review process, errors can go unchecked. Extraordinary claims can be presented without the extraordinary evidence required to support them. The line between research and speculation can become dangerously blurred. The story of Three-Eye Atlas highlights this tension. On one hand, Sereda is doing exactly what good scientists should do, observing an anomaly, proposing a hypothesis, and presenting it for discussion. On the other hand, his hypothesis is so extraordinary and his evidence so far unverified that it is dismissed by the mainstream. This creates a feedback loop. The mainstream ignores him, which pushes him further toward the fringe, which makes the mainstream take him even less seriously. The role of the amateur investigator in the 21st century is therefore complex. They are essential gadflies, pushing the boundaries of knowledge and challenging institutional complacency. But they also operate in an ecosystem where sensationalism is often rewarded more than careful, patient work. The challenge for the public is to learn how to evaluate these claims critically, to be open to new ideas from outside the mainstream, while also demanding a high standard of evidence. The truth about Three-Eye Atlas will likely be found not by a lone amateur or a single government agency, but through a collaborative effort that bridges both worlds. We need the curiosity and passion of the amateurs, combined with the rigor and resources of the professional scientific establishment. Only by working together can we hope to solve the deepest mysteries of the cosmos. Where do we go from here? The investigation into Three-Eye Atlas is far from over. It has only just begun. The object itself is now receding into the outer solar system, but the data it may have left behind is still being analyzed. The next steps are clear: and must be pursued with both determination and scientific integrity. First and foremost, we must continue the search for independent verification of the Fibonacci pulses. This means scouring the archives of every observatory, professional and amateur, that was pointed in the right direction on October 13, 2025. It means filing FOIA requests with every space agency that might have data. It means building a coalition of researchers dedicated to finding the truth, whatever it may be. Second, we need to pressure NASA and other agencies for complete transparency regarding the instrument blackouts. We need detailed logs, internal reports, and a clear timeline of the decisions that led to the SDO maintenance being scheduled for that specific date. We need to know if there was any external influence on those decisions. Third, we must continue to monitor 3I Atlas as it departs. If it is an active probe, it might signal again. It might change course. It might do something else extraordinary. We need to keep our most powerful telescopes trained on it for as long as possible. Fourth, we need to prepare for the next one. 3I Atlas is the third known interstellar object. There will be more. We need to develop protocols for rapid response, for real-time data sharing, and for the potential detection of technosignatures. We cannot afford to be caught off guard again. This investigation is a marathon, not a sprint. It will require patience, resources, and a steadfast commitment to the truth. But the potential reward is the greatest discovery in human history. It is a quest worthy of our finest minds and our most courageous spirits. The future is watching, and it is waiting to see what we do next. At its core, the mystery of 3I Atlas is not an astronomical problem. It is a philosophical one. It forces us to confront fundamental questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and our place in the cosmos. If the claims are true, they suggest that the universe is not a meaningless void, but a place of intention, intelligence, and perhaps even purpose. The use of the Fibonacci sequence implies that mathematics is not just a human invention for describing the world, but the fundamental substrate of reality itself, a language that any sufficiently advanced intelligence would discover and use. This is a Platonic view of the universe, where mathematical forms have a real, independent existence. The connection to historical events like Fatima and Dante's Paradiso suggests that time might not be linear and meaningless, but cyclical and significant. It implies that history is not just one damn thing after another, but a story with a plot, a narrative being written by intelligences beyond our comprehension. This challenges the materialist, reductionist worldview that has dominated science for the past century. It suggests that consciousness might not be an accidental byproduct of brain chemistry, but a fundamental feature of the cosmos. The intelligence behind 3I Atlas, if it exists, would be a conscious being that has mastered physics and mathematics to a degree we can barely imagine. Its very existence would be proof that consciousness can evolve to become a co-creator of reality, shaping matter and energy to its will. This is both a humbling and an empowering thought. It means we are not the pinnacle of creation, but it also means that we have the potential to become so much more. The universe is not a cold, dead place. It is a living, thinking, communicating entity, and we are a part of its ongoing self-discovery. Whether 3I Atlas is a probe or a rock, the questions it has raised will echo through the ages. They are questions that every human in their heart has asked. Are we alone? Does our life have meaning? Is there a purpose to the cosmos? The search for answers is what makes us human. And that search, more than any signal, is what truly matters. As we stand on the brink of potential discovery, we must cultivate a quality that has been in short supply in human history: cosmic humility. This is the recognition that we are a young species on a small planet, with a limited understanding of a universe that is vast, strange, and beyond our current comprehension. Cosmic humility means being open to possibilities that challenge our deepest assumptions. It means listening for signals in forms we do not expect, from intelligences that may be utterly alien to us. It means accepting that our science, for all its power, is still in its infancy, and that there are realms of reality we have not yet learned to perceive. The story of 3I Atlas, whether it ends in confirmation or debunking, is a lesson in humility. It shows how easily we can be deceived by our own patterns of thought, and how quickly we can jump to conclusions based on limited data. But it also shows our incredible capacity for wonder, for curiosity, for the relentless pursuit of truth. If 3I Atlas is a natural object, let us study it with humility, learning everything we can about the formation of other solar systems. If it is an artificial probe, Let us approach it with humility, recognizing that we are in the presence of an intelligence that may be millions of years ahead of us. In either case, let us remember that we are part of a cosmos that is far more mysterious and magnificent than we can imagine. Our journey is just beginning. Let us proceed with awe, with caution, and with the humble recognition that we have so much left to learn. The human quest for meaning is unending. From the first time a human looked up at the night sky and wondered about the points of light, to the building of Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, to the launch of the Voyager probes, we have always sought to understand our place in the cosmos. The story of Three-Eye Atlas is the latest chapter in this ancient quest. It is a story that may be true or may be a beautiful fiction, but either way, it has value. It has sparked a global conversation. It has inspired us to look up, to question, to wonder. It has reminded us that the universe is full of mysteries waiting to be solved, and that we are the ones who must solve them. The investigation continues. The data is still being analyzed. The truth is still out there, and we will not stop until we find it. Thank you for being part of this journey. Keep looking up,